and tell us that there were events. They tell us all of these things, where the population was this and that. But at the end of the day, we are not 100% sure that these stories from the 1300s are true. So the only math we can go off of is what we are provided from when we are actually here and documenting it. And now we can do the same thing with the worldwide population, where the population is decreasing at a rate of 66.1765% every 69 years. The rate of the population worldwide should not be increasing or decreasing by 66%. This is obviously showing that there's something going on. At this rate, 1886 would have realistically only had 928 million people, and 1817 worldwide would mathematically already have been down to 314 million people. And this is information that is provided to us, sitting right here in front of our faces, where they, in my opinion, were just waiting for us to find this. At this point, I think this is a game to this group to see who can figure this out. All of this information is all here provided with clues. All we have to do is simply look. The math doesn't lie. The worldwide population would mathematically drop down to only 106 million people in 1748, which was only 31 years after we are told that this group began. In 1679, according to this math, there were only 35 million people here. Worldwide, the population in 1610 would have only been 11.8 million. 3.9 million people in 1541, and if we bring it all the way back to the year 1200, 800 years ago, the exact same year that the mainstream history is telling us all about, like they were there and saw it happening themselves. They saw those 1200s and 1300s people just smacking those stones right into place, and they're there forever. They are telling us that it was built at the end, not the beginning, but at the end of the 12th century at this rate, every 69 years, decreasing by 66% overall. Nobody is even here. Only 17,700 people worldwide, and this is all based on basic math and numbers that are provided to us. And if this is true, this completely disproves these stories, these tales, that people in the 13th century were building massive cathedrals. It basically puts an end to all historical narratives suggesting that a population of basically nobody, more specifically 17,000 people worldwide, were as advanced or more advanced than we are today in terms of construction that we can still see today, yet being primitive, wearing night.
This don't change your mind about the ancient Egyptians, there's no hope for you. This large granite box carved by the Egyptians is on display at the Cairo Museum, which, by the way, granite is hard as harder than steel, and we typically use diamond-tipped electric buzzsaws to cut through it these days. So this box was abandoned by the Egyptians due to this mistake in the cut. Now wait, hold up. I want you to think about this for a sec. Modern explanations claim that the methods ancient Egyptians used to cut granite involved painfully slow and repetitive sawing techniques using copper tools. Don't you think they would have noticed a mistake like this way sooner if they were actually using those snail-pace techniques? A cut like this would have taken several hours, if not days of work, and there's no way they would have done it for that long without noticing this error. They were way smarter than that. Like seriously, the top Egyptologists claimed this is how they cut granite back then. A rate of 4 millimeters per hour, and they're still standing by it. Clearly, the people cutting this block would have booked this mistake much earlier in the process, and they'd have no reason to continue sawing the granite for hours or even days longer as soon as they saw this inaccuracy, unless they were using some other unknown cutting technique, one that is far quicker than our history books suggest, and possibly far more advanced than even our diamond-tipped buzzsaws. Hey, yo, I gotta go. I've said too much. Straight up, if this don't change your mind about the ancient Egyptians, there's no hope.
ancient doorway cut directly out of the rock is called the Kapilikaya rock tomb. It's located atop of a rocky mountain in Kirkdalum. This mysterious tomb dates back to the Hellenistic period, meaning it was created around 2,300 years ago. Intriguingly, although it's called a tomb, no remains have ever been found. Archaeologists believe the tomb was looted at some point during history, and whatever was inside was stolen. The sides of the tomb are narrow, but a person can easily fit down. The tomb walls are adorned with modern-day graffiti, but you can see how straight they are. That's some really impressive chisel and hammer work. It's more obvious on the second side that the walls seem to slope inwards, making them wider at the bottom and more narrow at the top. If they chiseled from the bottom up, those ancient people would have had biceps for days. But the most interesting part of all is that there is nothing behind it, meaning the only entrance is the small square cut out of the middle, just enough space, I guess, to push a body through. This ancient doorway cut direct.
Ancients moved large stones?
The ancient Greek mathematician Archimedes said, "Give me a lever long enough and a fulcrum on which to place it, and I shall move the world." This is a relief from the palace of Sennacherib, who was a king of the Neo-Assyrian Empire. In the relief, we see a group of men using a long lever to move a large stone statue, which probably looks something like this. To the left, we see an even larger group of men using ropes to pull the statue forward. And then at the top left, we see the king Sennacherib himself commanding the construction effort. This photograph from the 1950s shows islanders from the island of Nias in Indonesia dragging an 8 to 10 ton stone up a hill using a similar method to what we saw in the Assyrian relief. The islanders place a stone on a wooden sledge to mitigate frictional resistance, which we can also see is used in the Assyrian example. Now, if these islanders were to add mechanical leverage to the equation, they could move a stone much larger than 8 to 10 tons. The ancients had a much better understanding of mechanical advantage than the general population does today. That's because technology has replaced our need to use mechanical advantage creatively on a day-to-day basis. And that's why people create fantasy narratives about how these large structures were created, because they don't have that same understanding that the ancients did.
Is this how the ancient
statues were made so well that we can't even recreate them today? So whatever technique they were using back then to get marble to look like this, ancient Greek statues were made so well that we can't even recreate them today. So whatever technique they were using back then to get marble to look like this must have been lost. I mean, just look at the bends in the clothing, how real it looks. And look at his beard. It actually looks like real hair. Like, you could almost just go up there and run your hand through his beard. And some details were so small that we need a microscope from today's time to even see them. This muscle right here only contracts whenever you lift your pinky. And look at Michelangelo's pinky in the statue. And then the muscle's contracted. That's crazy detail. Here's a better view of that muscle. Alright, there ain't no way someone created this. I mean, just look at the veil across this lady's face. And they're saying that someone in 1500 created this with a freaking chisel. Just look at the veil on her face. It looks so real, you could just go up and remove it. Alright, someone's got some explaining to do on this one, because ain't no way that somebody made this with a freaking chisel. The marble is rolled to look like a real blanket. I mean, that's like a petrified person right there. And what's crazy is none of these statues have any chisel marks or scratches. I find it pretty hard to believe that someone thousands of years ago created something so perfect. Ancient Greek statues were made so well.
Fascinating hypothesis that the Dendera light, a peculiar hieroglyph that is located in the Hathor temple, could be a representation of an ancient electrical device. The main image is found on freestone reliefs and shows a long pointed object surrounded by a bubble or bowl-like shape with a wire leading to a box where figures can be seen. At the other end of the bowl is a lotus flower, and extending from this is a snake-like line. Some proponents of the ancient astronaut hypothesis suggest that this is a clear depiction of an electric light bulb, with the snake representing the filament, the lotus flower the socket, and the bubble the bulb itself. There is a fascinating hypothesis that the
2. Researchers were shocked to discover a series of well-arranged metallic pipe-like structures in China. These strange structures were embedded in the rocks around the Mount Baigong. The pipelines were discovered next to Kadim Basin, which is located at the foothills of the Himalayan highlands. The harsh climate of this area has made it inhospitable throughout human history. The most important discovery was a 50-60 meter high pyramid-like protrusion. This protrusion is surrounded by a system of well-organized pipe-like structures that lead to Lake Tosonhu, a saline water lake approximately 300 feet away. The origin of these Baigong pipelines and who built them are still a mystery. Was this any sort of ancient research center, or some sort of ancient extraterrestrial facility or base? Ancient astronaut theorists say yes. Another hypothesis is that it was constructed by prehistoric human civilization, using techniques that were lost to subsequent humans. In 2002, researchers